Nationwide surge in COVID cases is leading to extra precautions at the ballot box. I'm Charles Watson in Atlanta. I'll have that story coming up.
Plus, a Trump train took off in Neosho, Missouri today with a 100-car caravan. You'll hear what local Trump supporters think about the state of the race.
I'm Brian Yennis here in Pennsylvania, which both campaigns see as crucial to winning the 270 electoral votes they'll need on Tuesday. More on that story coming up.
Meteorologist Nick Kelly has your weather. Andy Ciateco is on sports. I'm Mike Mahoney, and this is your KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on this November 1st. I hope you guys had a nice Halloween. A nationwide surge in new COVID-19 cases is fueling concerns that the spread could get worse over the coming months. The virus is also creating logistical issues for poll workers and voters trying to cast their ballots during the final days of the presidential election. Fox News' Charles Watson has more.
Hospitals are gearing up for what could be a new wave of coronavirus, with 24 states reporting their worst weeks for new cases. Health officials say even though the numbers are trending upwards, many factors have changed since the first wave in March and April.
If we have universal wearing of masks, physical distancing, avoiding congregate settings and crowds, and doing things more indoors versus outdoors and washing hands, we do not necessarily have to accept the inevitability of these major surges that we're seeing.
Infection rates this time around are higher among young people who are less likely to show symptoms or die from the virus, but could spread it to others, especially over the holidays.
It's very unlikely that children will die from this. It is likely, unfortunately, that they will give it to others in the family.
The surge has also been a concern for polling locations in the final days of the election. Several states are distributing masks, gloves, and social distancing markers for workers. Others are ramping up curbside ballot drop-off to limit the risk of exposure.
For those who are voting in person now, I believe it's safe. The PPE is in good shape. The making sure that people stand six feet apart is in good shape. The clerks are ready. So I feel that this election can go off in a really safe way.
Avoiding those crowded polling locations is one motivation for millions of Americans casting their ballots early. Officials hope the record turnout will help ease some of the burden on poll workers on Election Day. In Atlanta, Charles Watson, Fox News.
Today, more than 100 cars lined up for the Red Wave Caravan in Neosho, Missouri. Organizers say Trump parades are picking up in popularity across the 4-state area. This event started out with just 6 vehicles about a month ago, but it's grown each time. Supporters of the president are hoping to swing some voters ahead of Election Day.
I think they're hearing all the bad about Trump and they're not seeing all the good. And I think if people would see all the support that he's getting, it may give them a pause and time to think about it, before they go and vote.
Participants and onlookers were also able to purchase Trump 2020 merchandise at the event. After months of campaigning and an election filled with unusual storylines, it will all come down to which candidate can get 270 electoral votes on Tuesday night. Fox News' Brian Yennis explains what that might look like for both President Trump and former VP Biden.
With just 3 days left before Election Day, both candidates are making a big push in states they see as essential to victory on Tuesday. Joe Biden has a number of paths to 270 electoral votes, the simplest carrying the 3 Midwestern states that Hillary Clinton could not in 2016, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. The former vice president spent Saturday in Michigan, where he was backed by his old boss, former President Barack Obama.
Get out there and vote! I don't care how hard Donald Trump tries. There's nothing, let me say it again, there's nothing that he can do to stop the people of this nation from voting in overwhelming numbers and taking back this democracy.
Perhaps the fiercest fight has been in Pennsylvania, considered a must-win state for both campaigns. The president making 4 stops here just on Saturday.
Joe Biden will shut down your economy, wipe out your factories, and shut down your state. ship your jobs to China, raise your taxes.
President Trump will most likely also need Florida to get to 270, where polls show a tight race. He moved his official residence to the Sunshine State last year. He's had 3 campaign trips there this month and plans to return again before Election Day. On the Democrats' wish list, some potential long-shot victories like Texas. Senate races could also help potentially flip other Republican strongholds like Georgia and Arizona. So far, more than 90 million Americans have cast their ballots during early voting. That's about 65% of the total voter turnout in 2016. In Butler, Pennsylvania, Brian Yennis, Fox News.
All right, enough politics for now. There will be plenty more later in the show. Let's talk weather. Let's talk Nick Kelly. Nick.
A quiet beginning to November, Mike, and a chilly start to the month as well, with highs today right around 57 after we started actually a bit cold this morning, right around the 40-degree mark. We have high pressure sitting on top of us right now. When you factor that with a calm breeze, bringing in a cooler air mass and definitely clear skies in place, that is leading to a freeze warning until 8 a.m. for northeast Oklahoma and northwestern Arkansas. But even if you aren't under a freeze warning, it's going to be a cold night with most of us dipping back, mainly lower to middle 30s. I think around Joplin we'll bottom out around 34. Then the rest of the day, we'll see plenty of sunshine and finally back on the mild side of things with afternoon highs back around 60. We'll see how the week ahead is shaping up coming up here in just a bit, Mike.
I know it's just a matter of time before I wake up to that frozen windshield. All right, thanks so much, Nick Kelly. Halloween can be an interesting night for many police departments, but police in Baxter Springs say their community was exceptionally well behaved last night. The police department hit up Facebook today to thank adults for taking safety seriously and the kids for behaving responsibly. They say people were driving slowly and those on foot were walking in groups, and they also say the kids looked great in their costumes. All right, it's now time for us to honor one of our many four-state heroes. And tonight we recognize Charles Ogle of Fredonia, Kansas. Charles served as a corporal in the U.S. Army and he fought in Korea. He earned a Korean Service Medal and many other honors. Thank you, sir, for your courage and for your service. For more information on all our four-state heroes or to nominate your own, just log on to KOAMNewsNow.com. And we'll be right back with meteorologist Nick Kelly and another look at your weather. Plus, a super typhoon is battering the Philippines and it's forced roughly 1 million people to evacuate. And we've got the details when we return.
You hadn't really noticed it today, but a cold front did sneak through late last night, and we just certainly felt the difference today as far as temperatures go, even though it looked nice from across indigo sky all across Seneca, Missouri, and in fact all around the area. The cold front did make us end the weekend on a bit of a chilly note compared to the mid-60s that we saw yesterday. We flirted with the lower 40s and upper 30s this morning, and only made it back into the middle of the upper 50s, so certainly staying below normal and a chilly start to the month of November, but thankfully we're staying mild for much of this week with not a lot of storm systems to track throughout the duration of the period. Everybody this morning started out cold though, upper 30s to lower 40s all across the board, back into the mid and even some upper 50s, especially outside of Joplin. But ever since we got past sunset, which set after the 5 o'clock hour, that's the result of setting back the clocks back an hour. Look at how cold it's gotten already. We have many spots into the 30s already. That's pretty much where we're going to stay, meaning we start cold for our Monday morning around Joplin, let's say 34, some outlying areas, sneaking into the lower 30s. Then, thankfully, we'll be back toward mild territory tomorrow afternoon with highs back around 60. Clear skies up top. We've seen that all day long and all throughout the course of the day and evening so far. Behind our cold front, that's well to the east of us now. In fact, it's getting ready to work into the Atlantic. Behind that, though, high pressure is keeping us cold tonight, but as it scoots off to the east, it'll start to bring in mild air for tomorrow. In addition to the upper level setup undergoing a change, we were under the influence of this upper low working over the Great Lakes, but now an upper ridge is taking hold. That's going to help bring back the mild air as we get this first full week of November underway. Before we see some of that mild air finally work back in, though, not much to show you here on the future track other than if you're not a fan of the cold, be sure you bundle up before you head out the door for work and school first thing in the morning with clear skies in place and a light breeze, even though it turns more out of the south and southeast. Everywhere you go, it's going to be cold with most of us in the lower to middle 30s. I'm thinking Joplin starts around 34 in the morning. Sunny skies up top, and we're going to keep it that way throughout the course of the day. Even though the daylight hours have been shrinking now ever since we rewound the clock back an hour, we're still going to make the most of the sunshine and the south wind, turning southwesterly at 5 to 15. That'll push us to 56 by noon. Afternoon highs in Joplin around 60. I think everyone's fair game to go at least near 60 degrees. Maybe the farther west you go from Joplin, I wouldn't be surprised if you hit lower to middle 60s for afternoon highs on your Monday. Looking at the rest of the week, not much to show upon first impressions here. Underneath the ridge, we stay quiet and mild for Election Day with highs back near 70 on Tuesday. Then a quick upper low passes by. It only has enough moisture for mostly cloudy skies on Wednesday. I'm not concerned about rain chances with this wave. It'll quickly work out on Thursday. Quiet to start the weekend out. Then sticking with Doug's pattern, here's the next potential storm system we're watching. It won't get here until at the earliest next Sunday during the afternoon. By the time it does, though, it'll be ready to bring rain and even some thunderstorm chances back in here. Other than that, we're looking quiet and pretty much the same for the rest of the week. 60 tomorrow and staying in the upper 60s to near 70 throughout much of the week with mostly sunny to mostly cloudy skies. Mike?
Well, thanks so much, Nick Kelly. And hey, Nick, check out this weather event. A super typhoon is battering the Philippines. Roughly 1 million people evacuated from their homes as Typhoon Goni hit the country. The storm carried winds of up to 140 miles per hour and brought heavy flooding similar to a Category 5 hurricane. The Philippines is still trying to recover from a typhoon which made landfall about a week ago and killed at least 22 people. Hundreds gathered in shelters in Manila as residents braced for landslides, flooding, and storm surges topping 16 feet. And when we return, we are taking a closer look at the voter enthusiasm for the upcoming presidential election.
Voters are shattering records across the country. I'm Ray Bogan with a look at some of the early vote counts and what that means for Election Day coming up.
Welcome back to your News at 9. As President Trump and former Vice President Biden continue to fight for votes, record-breaking levels of early voting indicate voter enthusiasm is at an all-time high. Fox News' Ray Bogan takes a closer look.
There's more enthusiasm. The crowds are much bigger.
Make a plan to vote. Vote early. Vote on Election Day. Help get out the vote.
They're right. Americans are voting in record numbers. In fact, more than 9 million people voted early in Texas this year. That's more than the state's total for all of 2016.
It's estimated that over half of the votes that will be cast in this election have already been cast, and we're still a number of days before Election Day. That's really unusual. It's really extraordinary.
A vast majority of states have surpassed their 2016 early vote counts. In Kansas, it's nearly 10 times higher, and in New Hampshire, more than 7 times more. Lines have also formed in Maryland, where early voting began this week. 68-year-old James Brooks just cast a ballot for the first time. What finally got him out? He says he's concerned about his health care.
The medicine is so high, it don't make sense. And I decided to go for who's going to help me for my health-wise.
All these ballots could take time to count, especially those sent by mail. For instance, Michigan's Secretary of State estimates her office will have a full count by Friday, November 6th.
I think it's absolutely critical that Americans understand that we may not know on election night or even for a day or two thereafter exactly who won. And that Americans understand that there is nothing wrong with that.
The vote count continues to climb by the hour. So far, nearly 84 million ballots have been cast. Ray Bogan, Fox News.
Yesterday, we showed you businesses in Los Angeles boarding up and bracing for presidential election results. It looks like businesses in the Big Apple are following suit. Potentially violent protests are expected no matter which side ends up winning, so the New York Police Department is advising stores and restaurants in Midtown Manhattan to prepare additional security measures. That includes boarding up windows, blocking doors, and removing any tables or chairs from sidewalks. The NYPD sent a letter to business groups in Manhattan Manhattan, informing them that the department is also making special preparations to keep the peace on Election Day. The police say they'll have staffing levels similar to other major events like New Year's Eve and 4th of July. Many of these same businesses were looted in the unrest that followed the killing of George Floyd, and owners say this time around they want to make sure their property is secure. Also in New York City, police arrested anti-Trump demonstrators in Manhattan today. The demonstrators gathered at Madison Square Park and were hoping to intercept a caravan of Trump supporters headed to Manhattan. Police blocked protesters who began hurling insults at the officers. The New York Post reports that 10 people were arrested. Right after this short break, we are saddling up and taking a trip over to Texas. And we'll be checking out a pretty unique place to cast your vote. An LGBTQ bar in Harris County will serve as a polling location. They say if a church can do it, so can they. Details are next. There's a unique voting location coming to the Lone Star State. Buddy's in Montrose is now the first bar in Harris County to serve as a polling location, so voters can cast their ballot and then they can grab a beer. Fox News' Natalie He has the story.
Well, Buddy's Bar in Montrose just opened last Christmas Eve for 11 weeks. Then COVID-19 happened and the bar had to shut down for 6 months. But now the owner tells us business is doing well. In fact, it'll now make history as the first LGBTQ bar to serve as an election day polling place.
I call this the gateway to the neighborhood. We're under the pride flag. It's loud and proud, and this is Montrose.
On the corner of Grant and Fairview sits Buddy's, an LGBTQ-friendly bar.
Well, we called the bar Buddy's because everybody's welcome.
A peek inside on a Thursday afternoon, one can see a few patrons sipping on happy hour cocktails. But on November 3rd, the inside front section will transform into a 14-booth voting center, one of roughly 800 in Harris County. It's the first LGBTQ bar to be approved as an official Election Day polling place for a presidential election.
What is the most helpful thing that we can do for our community the day of to help them vote? And that's literally turning it into a polling location.
Owner Christopher Berry is planning for business as usual on Tuesday with a party in the back parking lot so voters can cast their ballots, then walk outside to the patio and order pizza and drinks from the double-sided bar.
We're not serving people as they vote. Obviously, that's, a voting space. We'll also have an event from 5 to 10 p.m. with a DJ on Election Day in the back parking lot.
Buddy's is certainly not your typical voting center at a school or a gym. Next door is an adult novelty store and Hamburger Mary's, a drag restaurant.
Not everybody agrees with a gay bar or LGBTQ space, or just as much as churches are welcome, so should a gay bar be welcome to participate in a democratic process.
Still to come, we are headed to Turkey, where an earthquake victim is lucky to be alive. You'll learn about a guy who was rescued this weekend after being trapped under rubble for 33 hours. We're right back in just 2 quick minutes. Welcome back. Rescue workers in Turkey found a man buried alive under rubble who had been stuck there for more than 30 hours. Video shows rescue teams pulling the man to safety. Rescuers carefully navigated around a large piece of concrete. Then they placed a neck brace on the man before fully lifting him out of the debris. The man was one of dozens of victims trapped under rubble after a massive 7.0 earthquake rocked Turkey and Greece. Authorities now say at least 40 people were killed in Friday's quake, including more than 35 people in Turkey and 2 in Greece. Well, don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more news headed your way, as well as another look at your weather with meteorologist Nick Kelly and your KOAM Sports Report with Andy Ciateco. That's all headed your way right here on your KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14. And still to come, another attack on a church in France leaves the country reeling just days after Islamic extremists killed 3 people in a church in Nice. Plus, protesters continue to pack the streets of Vancouver following the shooting death of a 21-year-old black man. That story and more are coming right up. Another attack on a church in France leaves the country reeling just days after Islamic extremists killed 3 people in a church in Nice. Fox News' Ryan Chilcote has the details.
France is in shock today after a Greek Orthodox priest was shot in a church in Lyon. The police say that the gunman entered the church, shot the priest twice, and then fled on foot. Several hours later, the police reported they had apprehended a suspect. The reason for the shooting is still unclear, but the police will definitely be looking at this in the context of an absolutely gruesome attack just 2 days ago when an Islamic extremist broke into a Catholic church in the city of Nice, beheading a woman and killing 2 others. And another attack 2 weeks ago when a teacher was beheaded on a Parisian street. That attack took place after the victim, a history teacher, showed his students some cartoons mocking the Prophet Muhammad in a class where they were debating freedom of expression. And that is the issue here. Muslims right around the world, including protesters today in Pakistan, see these cartoons that mock the Prophet Muhammad as an irreverent affront to their faith. Now, a little history. In 2015, you may remember 2 Islamic extremists storming into a French satirical newspaper's headquarters and killing 12 of its journalists after they published these same cartoons the first time. That newspaper, Charlie Hebdo, started publishing these cartoons this September. Again, President Macron just gave an interview to the television channel Al Jazeera. He said, "We respect Islam. In fact, we respect all religions, but people must be able to express themselves freely and must be able to practice their faith in peace." In London, Ryan Chilcote, Fox News.
Clashes broke out between demonstrators and police in Spain. Hundreds of protesters marched in the streets of Barcelona on Saturday. The large group was upset over recent evictions which took place across the city. Demonstrators called the actions a war against the poor as they threw rocks and smashed windows. In response, riot police moved in and forced the crowds to leave. The city put evictions on hold during the first lockdown in the spring, but reimposed them after restrictions were lifted. Coronavirus numbers are climbing again in the country, and restrictions have been put back in place, resulting in heavy criticism of the latest round of removals. Barcelona wasn't the only Spanish city seeing problems from COVID-19 restrictions. People lashed out at police and storefronts amidst the latest lockdown in the Spanish city of Logroño. This video shows protesters throwing drain covers and stones at a Lacoste store in the middle of the city, breaking down the storefront and looting the items inside. Rioters also pelted police with stones. The country's national coronavirus emergency is expected to last through early May of next year, with localities able to determine curfews and limit travel. There was a second night of demonstrations in Washington state last night following the death of a 21-year-old black man. Protesters filled Vancouver streets, blocking traffic and demanding answers in the shooting death of Kevin Peterson Jr. Demonstrators initially gathered Friday after a vigil was held for Peterson, and protesters and counter-protesters squared off, leading to 6 arrests. Peterson was killed by Clark County, Washington Sheriff's deputies on Thursday. According to a statement from the county sheriff's office, a narcotics task force was conducting an investigation when they chased a man into a parking lot. The sheriff's department says the man fired a gun at deputies who had backed off the encounter. Investigators confirmed Peterson was armed with a gun, but official details of Peterson's death are still unclear. A man dressed in a medieval clothing and carrying a Japanese sword went on a stabbing rampage in Canada. Police in Quebec City say they arrested a man in his mid-20s on Saturday. He is suspected of killing at least 2 people and injuring 5 others near a historic hotel. Before police captured the suspect, they warned people to remain indoors. Based on initial information, police believe the attack was personal and not terrorism. A full investigation is underway. We'll be right back with meteorologist Nick Kelly and another look at your weather. Don't go anywhere.
You hadn't really noticed it today, but a cold front did sneak through late last night, and we just certainly felt the difference today as far as temperatures go. Even though it looked nice from across indigo sky all across Seneca, Missouri, and in fact all around the area, the cold front did make us end the weekend on a bit of a chilly note compared to the mid-60s that we saw yesterday. We flirted with the lower 40s and upper 30s this morning and only made it back into the middle to upper 50s. So certainly staying below normal and a chilly start to the month of November, but thankfully we're staying mild for much of this week with not a lot of storm systems to track throughout the duration of the period. Everybody this morning started out cold though. Upper 30s to lower 40s all across the board, back into the mid and even some upper 50s, especially outside of Joplin. But ever since we got past sunset, which set after the 5 o'clock hour, that's the result of setting back the clocks back an hour. Look at how cold it's gotten already. We have many spots into the 30s already. That's pretty much where we're going to stay, meaning we start cold for our Monday morning around Joplin, let's say 34, some outlying areas, sneaking into the lower 30s. Then, thankfully, we'll be back toward mild territory tomorrow afternoon with highs back around 60. Clear skies up top. We've seen that all day long and all throughout the course of the day and evening so far. Behind our cold front, that's well to the east of us now. In fact, it's getting ready to work into the Atlantic. Behind that, though, high pressure is keeping us cold tonight, but as it scoots off to the east, it'll start to bring in mild air for tomorrow. In addition to the upper level setup undergoing a change, we were under the influence of this upper low working over the Great Lakes, but now an upper ridge is taking hold. That's going to help bring back the mild air as we get this first full week of November underway. Before we see some of that mild air finally work back in, though, not much to show you here on the future track other than if you're not a fan of the cold, be sure you bundle up before you head out the door for work and school first thing in the morning with clear skies in place and a light breeze, even though it turns more out of the south and southeast. Everywhere you go, it's going to be cold with most of us in the lower to middle 30s. I'm thinking Joplin starts around 34 in the morning. Sunny skies up top, and we're going to keep it that way throughout the course of the day. Even though the daylight hours have been shrinking now ever since we rewound the clock back an hour, we're still going to make the most of the sunshine and the south wind, turning southwesterly at 5 to 15. That'll push us to 56 by noon. Afternoon highs in Joplin around 60. I think everyone's fair game to go at least near 60 degrees. Maybe the farther west you go from Joplin, I wouldn't be surprised if you hit lower to middle 60s for afternoon highs on your Monday. Looking at the rest of the week, not much to show upon first impressions here. Underneath the ridge, we stay quiet and mild for Election Day with highs back near 70 on Tuesday. Then a quick upper low passes by. It only has enough moisture for mostly cloudy skies on Wednesday. I'm not concerned about rain chances with this wave. It'll quickly work out on Thursday. Quiet to start the weekend out. Then sticking with Doug's pattern, here's the next potential storm system we're watching. It won't get here until at the earliest next Sunday during the afternoon. By the time it does, though, it'll be ready to bring rain and even some thunderstorm chances back in here. Other than that, we're looking quiet and pretty much the same for the rest of the week. 60 tomorrow and staying in the upper 60s to near 70 throughout much of the week with mostly sunny to mostly cloudy skies. Mike?
Well, thanks again, Nick, and stay tuned, sports fans, because we will be right back with Andy Ciateco and your KOAM News at 9 Sports Report. Andy's got highlights from tonight's Chiefs matchup with the New York Jets, and she's got a whole lot more. That's headed your way in just 2 short minutes.
Welcome back and welcome into the Toyota Sunday Night Sports Feed. The Kansas City Chiefs are back at home after 2 straight road wins. The Chiefs are 6-1 on the year, hosting the winless New York Jets. Le'Veon Bell facing the Jets today, just weeks after they released him. Opening drive for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes flips it forward to Mecole Hardman. Goes 30 yards for the touchdown. Chiefs up 7 early. Later in the first, Kansas City on 4th and 4. Tommy Townsend fakes the punt before finding Byron Pringle for the 13-yard gain. Chiefs with a fresh set of downs. Next play, Mahomes has time in the pocket to find Tyreek Hill in the end zone for the 36-yard score. Chiefs leading 14-3. Just over a minute left before the break. Mahomes throws an underhanded pass to Travis Kelce, 3 yards untouched. Kelce dunks on the goalpost after. He would be penalized for the excessive celebration, though. Chiefs up 12 at the half. Fourth quarter, Mahomes loads up, fires to Hill downfield. That's a 41-yard touchdown completion. Mahomes threw for 400-plus yards and 5 touchdowns. Chiefs handled the Jets 35-9.
They were coming down fast, and the guys were getting open in space, and I was putting it in their hands. And I think the biggest thing was he kept calling those plays. He kept giving me the option to do run or throw the pass. And I think when you do that, it really puts a lot of stress on the defense.
Nice job by Patrick. Again, he had complete command of everything going on, including the check at the end when they were in a blitz look and hit Tyreek on a big touchdown.
At the college level, the Pittsburgh State Gorillas fell 31-26 in their fall opener to Nebraska Kearney on Saturday. PSU is 0-1 to start off the Brian Wright era. The Gorillas scored first on a 2-yard touchdown by Tyler Atkins, but the Lopers' double-digit lead in the fourth was too much to overcome for Pitt State. Quarterback Max Sexton passed for a career-high 398 yards and 3 touchdowns. The top 2 receivers in the contest were Pitt freshmen Christian Carter and former Pittsburgh Purple Dragon Dylan White, who combined for 258 yards and 2 scores.
We got some guys stepping up, we got some transfers, and we were missing Bryce Murphy today, but he'll be back next week, and I'm really excited with the squad that we have.
You know, I thought we matched up well. Kearney has a couple of outstanding corners, and they played a good game today, and I like our guys. I like our receivers, and I like what they can do, and I think they can be weapons for us, that's for sure.
That's a look at sports. Back with more news after this.
Welcome back to the show. Fox News is taking a look at how the coronavirus is affecting children, their education, and their parents. Here's Fox News' Rich Edson with more.
I would love the children to be back in school. And I think that they would love to be back in school as well.
Lynn Ormsby is like many parents. She wants her kids back in the classroom. But she is also in the majority in Virginia with concerns about reopening schools. A recent Washington Post poll shows 59% oppose requiring Virginia schools to open for in-person classes 5 days a week.
There's no plan. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable that they're going to be able to manage this.
In New Jersey, there are reports of a school district scuttling plans to reopen as county officials cite in-school transmission. In Wisconsin, a high school is back to distance learning as 6 staff members are in quarantine. And the nationwide spike of COVID-19 cases has prompted schools in Utah, Maryland, Boston, Chicago, and elsewhere to delay plans to reopen. Yet there are other worries. Students learning remotely risk falling behind, have internet access challenges, mental health concerns, and widening disparities between rich and poor.
There's research, there's data, there's evidence, and there are natural experiments happening all the time in other school systems that we ought to be paying close attention to and seeing what we can do for our kids here.
Miranda Turner is a parent and part of Arlington Parents for Education, an advocacy group pushing in-person instruction with COVID precautions. She points to a nationwide survey of schools in COVID-19 showing in-person class is not a super spreader event. The study, led by a Brown University economist, finds virus rates for students and staff reflect the rates in their broader communities. And top government scientists say resuming classroom learning should be a priority.
We should right now, to the best of our capability, trying to get children back to school. I think children getting back to school will be much sooner than getting people into theaters at full capacity.
Doctors acknowledge children can still spread COVID-19 between each other and adults, a serious concern for students with compromised immune systems and vulnerable or elderly adults at home. Scientists also recommend schools enforcing mask wearing, monitoring for those with symptoms, and keeping buildings ventilated and clean. In Washington, Rich Edson, Fox News.
Several pediatricians are sounding the alarm about a new trend that points to rising obesity rates and mental health issues among children during the pandemic. Fox News' Amber Wilmarth has that story.
We spoke with Dr. Lisa Denike. She's the chief of pediatrics for Kaiser Permanente Northwest. She tells us this is a result of kids trying to cope with the changes that the pandemic brought into their lives, like not being part of a sports team or taking remote classes. She says pediatricians noticed the trend in significant weight gain as more kids have been coming in for their annual physicals, telling us it could come from a lack of exercise, an increase in stress, or unhealthy eating habits. Dr. Denike says this is reversing recent improvements in childhood obesity rates. Along with physical health, she says children's mental health is also being impacted, telling us doctors are seeing a rise in mental health issues among children and teens, ranging from sadness and stress to anxiety and depression.
This is a really challenging time for everyone, and we all have to give each other a little bit of grace, while at the same time trying to keep ourselves and our communities and our children and each other healthy. And it really is about taking the time to think about how to do that and how to care about each other. Because again, we're role models for our children. They're watching us. They learn from what we do, not just what we say.
Her advice to parents is to make sure you and your kids are all getting enough sleep, have an eating schedule in place, including drinking enough water, and she suggests you make time for physical activity as well. Dr. Denaik says even a quick walk during your lunch break as a family can make a difference.
We are not done yet here on your KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14. You've probably heard a few big fish stories in your time, but there's an angler in the Golden State who's got the video to back hers up. And we're learning about a record-breaking 361-pound tuna when we return. Nearly 1 year ago, a canine officer at an Indiana police department was killed in the line of duty. His handler shared on social media that he never cried so much in his life, especially around his friends and co-workers. That opened up the topic of mental health struggles among men and first responders. Fox News' Courtney Crown has that story.
Fisher's Canine Patrol Officer Jared Koopmans built a bond with Canine Rico after his partner Harley was killed last November in the line of duty.
Being able to just have that time to talk about it and cry and understand that I should be sad and it's okay to be sad has really helped with that process.
Koopmans open about his heartache following Harley's death. He hopes it frees others to open up.
If I don't take care of what I need to take care of, or the trauma that I've seen, or the situations that I've been a part of, how am I able to be the best person for the next situation that comes? Because it's going to come.
The American Society for Suicide Prevention reports men are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide.
I do think that there is a stigma that men have themselves about not showing signs of what they perceive as weakness.
A 2019 study by the Addiction Center found police officers are at a higher risk of suicide than any other profession. Fortunately, Koopman feels like Fisher's PD helps break the stigma surrounding mental health by connecting them to resources.
You have the support of, your supervisors and your administration, and also your peer support and the guys you work with, because it's not an uncomfortable topic, because you have the chief leading by example and saying that it is important.
What's the concern with people keeping their feelings bottled up?
I think that puts you at greater risk for, the bottom line, for suicide, for one thing. You spend a lot of energy bottling things up.
Psychiatrists urge everyone, especially men, to have a relationship you can rely on. For Koopman, it's his wife, Kimberly.
They know you, and they know you if you are acting differently, if you are quieter. And I don't mean just like for a day or an hour.
And I always tell people the uncomfortable feelings that you get, those are the ones that you need to, address more.
All right, here's a fun story to end the show on. Check out this historic catch in California. A charter boat leaving out of Newport Beach caught a massive 361.2-pound tuna. Bailey Kelly, an angler, caught the fish with the help of the Thunderbird crew. The massive tuna was officially weighed at the Balboa Angling Club earlier this week. The angler herself says the help from the crew was invaluable.
I knew they were doing bigger fish, so it was like, oh shoot, kind of intimidating. But when you have great coaches and a great crew, it's anything's possible.
This trip proved to be quite fruitful as the team brought in a total of 11 bluefin tuna, varying from 160 to 361 pounds. Wow. All right, well, thanks so much for wrapping up your weekend with us. We'll see you next week for more KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14. Be sure to get out there and vote, and of course, stay safe.